This happened today, and it really messed with me. I've been thinking about it all day and all evening. I took my 5-year-old son and 3-month-old daughter to the playground today to meet a friend with her daughter. It's got regular playground equipment, a huge parking lot, and a big grassy area with trees surrounding the play area. On the other side of the trees is some sort of development thing they're working on. The area the school is in is pretty rural. It's just a bunch of twisty roads and random buildings. I never really thought about it or noticed until today. We get to the park and meet up with my friend. Another mom that we know is there with her 2 girls too. The only other people there are a dad with a little girl and a boy who looked to be somewhere between 10 and 12. All the moms are sitting, chatting, and playing with my adorable daughter, all having a good time. The kids are playing together too, so everything is good. Eventually, all the kids from our group kind of wander off through the playground, all doing their own thing. The seesaws are in a shady area. Next to them is a big stretch of grass, then the trees with the semi-developed area behind that. My son wants to go to the seesaw, but nobody wants to go with him. I get up to go help him, and a 10-ish-year-old boy comes over and says, "Hi, do you want me to play with him?" It was a little strange that he asked me and not my son, but I said, "Sure, bud, go ahead." He gets on the other side and starts seesawing with him, but his demeanor was so strange. He didn't smile at all. His voice was completely flat. He didn't say a word to my son. He just seesawed with him quietly. My son was oblivious to this all and was chatting away with him. After a few minutes, I started walking back to my bench when I hear the boy start talking with my son. Maybe he's just shy around grown-ups. I sit down and start talking to my friends. The dad walks near us to probably go up to his car, and I say, "Hey, it was really sweet for your son to offer to play with mine," and smile at him. He looks at me confused and says, "He's not my son. I don't know who he is. He just walked over and asked if I wanted him to play with my daughter, then just kind of followed us around until you guys got here." He sort of laughed and said, "Weird, right?" and shook his head. I got an uneasy feeling in my stomach and looked over to the seesaws. They were gone. I jump up, hand my daughter to my friend, and run in that direction yelling my son's name. I see them walking, almost to the trees. The trees are not close. I guess a football field or so away from the play area. I got this awful feeling and ran as fast as I could yelling my son's name. He turned around and started trying to walk to me, and the little boy grabs his arm and tries to pull him toward the trees. My son got upset and started yelling, "Hey, let go of me!" Now usually this is not a quality about my son that brings me anything but trouble, but he does not like to be grabbed, pushed, or pulled, and he has ADHD, so when he gets frustrated it usually comes out in aggressive ways. I was so thankful for this today. He starts punching at the boy and headbutting him like a little crazy person. The boy lets go as I get to them, and he runs off into the trees. My friends are finally realizing something is going on, so they're standing at the edge of the play area looking confused. My son is crying. I'm shaking. I don't know what the fuck just happened. I asked my son where he was going, and he said his friend wanted to take him to go see Ryan from Ryan Toy Reviews. It's his favorite YouTube channel, and he talks about it non-stop. He told the boy about Ryan, and apparently the boy had told him that he knew where Ryan lived, and asked if my son wanted to visit him and go play. Of course, my son said yes. I don't know what the intention was. It was a kid. I don't understand why he would lie to my son, or why he wanted him to go into the woods. Why he was so weird. Maybe it was all innocent, but somehow I don't think it was. November 2010. I was working a shit job at Jimmy John's as a delivery driver. Like a really shitty job. Pulling down $7.25 plus tips, which were really not that great. Usually I'd pull down $40 to $50 in cash tips in a night. There was this one really fucked up dude named Michael, who started 2 months after I did. I just could not stand this guy. The way he looked at our female coworkers, and just his overall attitude really freaked me out. He generally just pissed off everyone that worked there. I started dating one of our assembly line employees, and realized just how uncomfortable Michael made everyone in the store. From inappropriate comments, the straight up creepy way he looked at my coworkers, it was all just weird. He would only ever take deliveries, wouldn't do anything extra, and barely even knew the menu. He lasted a while at the job, even though he was late all the time, and his tickets were always short, like $20 to $30 short every day. February 2011, still working there. I was living with my then roommate, and he had just lost his job. His car was reliable, and I trusted him not to fuck me over, so I went up to our general manager. "Hey, so I know the schedule is full, but my roommate really needs a job, otherwise we're going to get kicked out of our place." Not entirely true, but I was selling it. "And I know that Michael doesn't exactly get along. I'm writing the schedule tomorrow. I'll lower his hours way down, and we'll see what he does." Honestly, that's how easy it was. Awesome. My best friend might be getting a job, and I'll get to see way less of the freak show. Win-win. Schedule gets put out, and Michael is on one of the worst shifts I've ever seen. 3 hours a day just before closing. Went from 25 plus hours a week to 12 hours. After about 3 shifts, Michael starts realizing just how fucked he's getting. No one tips at night. It's a horrible shift, and he had to close. He comes in the next day when he's not scheduled, and freaks out on the general manager. The GM is not having any of his shit. Nobody likes him there anyways. He tells him to leave before he dials 911. Michael leaves peacefully, and the general manager looks at me and says, "Call your buddy. We've been a man short for about a week." I make the call. My roommate shows up and he's hired on the spot. Just the legal stuff to work out. He starts in 2 days. It's awesome. Things are great. We're both making cash tips, which helps us afford the lifestyle of 2 22-year-olds, and we're making rent. Good enough. April 21st, 2011. I show up to work like usual. My roommate had found a different job making more money, which was great because being roommates and coworkers was not exactly ideal. I walk into work and my general manager just stares at me. He calls us to a backroom meeting and explains that Michael was just arrested for a double homicide. Apparently, after he left our Jimmy John's, he went to another store and had the same thing happen. His creepy attitude and poor work ethic meant he got screwed on shifts and hours. Turns out, he asked his father for $5 so he could get gas to go into work. His father said no, because he should be pulling down enough in tips to make it to work. In Michael's words, "I decided to make this time the last time he would argue." He went to his room, pulled a .22 rifle and shot his father in the back of the head 3 times. He freaked out and hid the body in the garage. When his mother got off work 2 hours later, he shot her twice in the head as she walked into the house. 2 days later, a welfare check was done by the police, and he was arrested on the spot. Apparently, he had ordered a one-way plane ticket back to his home country, but it hadn't arrived in the mail yet. Life sentence in prison, eligible for parole in 55 years. I hope to never see him again. Here's the part I'm not exactly proud of. 3 months later, I hear about an estate sale. Same neighborhood. Sure enough, it's the house. They're selling everything off. I mean, could you resist? I had to go. The creepiest shit I've ever seen. The dude had 30 pairs of brand new shoes, but no gas to get to work. He used to shoot holes in the basement wall with the .22. The holes were all still there. I got right out of there. It was just too weird. I still remember seeing his Jimmy John's hat hanging up in his bedroom. I once posted a thread about this incident on Twitter, but I wanted to talk about it again where I wasn't so limited. There are some more details in this post than there are in the Twitter thread I'd done several months back. This all happened to me in 2015, when I was 19 years old. I was a sophomore in college, and the only notable relationship I had was with the guy that later left me for unknown reasons. While this was all starting, my dad offered to give his old friend a place to stay. He was in his 40s at the time, and his room ended up being the downstairs common area right next to my room. His daughter was a childhood friend of mine and my sister, so when she visited, we often spent a lot of time together. I made the now regrettable decision of taking on a design major, so most of my homework that semester had to be done in this common room. I often had many late nights, so we'd end up talking to each other. He spent most nights playing World of Warcraft after coming home from his shifts down in Atlantic City. When he wasn't playing, the two of us would watch movies and shows on Netflix, or play video games together for all hours of the night. We shared a lot of interests, like anime, cult horror movies, different video game franchises, and a fascination with witchcraft. We ended up being pretty close friends. I didn't have my license at the time, so he would often take me to school and to work. That was more time that we had to get to know each other, and I ended up growing a bond with him. He became like an uncle to me. For the rest of the story, I'll be referring to him as Uncle. There were a few times where we did a lot of traveling together with his daughter, too. We'd go to the surrounding malls in our county, and there was one day where we went down to Smithville and looked at all the different shops. I genuinely had a great time, but then something started to seem off. On my days off from school and or work, we started to take trips during the week to different places. It started out with food shopping, or me needing to buy supplies for my classes. Then he started mentioning about this place where he frequented to get incense and paraphernalia. The only problem was that on this particular day, I had to babysit my youngest brother who was 3 at the time. My uncle assured me that he could just tag along, so we all ended up going. The shop was innocent enough, mostly selling Wiccan items and incense. I was interested in a lot of the things they were selling and was just taking a peek around. I tried making sure my brother stayed by my side, and I held his hand or would occasionally pick him up in my arms when he was shy. Meanwhile, my uncle was chatting with the tenders. One of them ended up making the mistake of asking, "Is that your son?" I still get asked if my younger brothers are my kids all the time, because of a big age gap between us. So I was, of course, quick to try and say, "No, he's my brother." My uncle, however, had a different way of handling it. He told them, "Yeah, isn't he cute?" I tensed up and was quick to really correct him now. The ladies apologized, but my uncle acted like I didn't say anything. They gave my brother a coloring book, and we soon left. I liked that shop, but because of that incident, I never went back again. I don't remember if I tried confronting him about it at the time, but it was definitely not the last time he tried something like this. Now, about that trip to Smithville, as fun as it was going there the first time, my uncle still tried keeping close to me in the shops, even with his daughter with us. He had a girlfriend that lived up north, and yet when people would talk to us, he acted like we were together. It made me feel uncomfortable, but what was I supposed to say? I thought that maybe I was digging too deeply into it, so I didn't say much unless if it's to look at his daughter to see her reaction. She did seem quite bothered, to my relief. But here's where things come to a head. Around November that year, my uncle invited me to come with him to this indie game convention that was in Atlantic City. It seemed like a harmless enough event, so on a day that I just so happened to be off, I decided to go with him. It was a simple enough convention, with a lot of indie game devs showing off their demos on the convention floor in this casino. There were different vendors and shops too. I sat down to play a demo that caught my interest. I was playing and getting a feel for the game, but the developer looked at me and my uncle and playfully commented to him, "This is a good game to play with your wife." I was awkwardly sitting there, mostly because any feminine epithet towards me made me extremely uncomfortable. But not once did my uncle correct them while we were at this particular booth. He never stopped to say, "No, wait, that's not it," or "Actually, I have a girlfriend already." He just went along with it. In fact, he always did that. Let me just remind you of this important detail. I was 19 years old, just barely over 5 foot, and struggling to survive off my paychecks. My uncle was a full-grown 44-year-old man. At this shop, I was looking around while my uncle met up with another guy that was looking around. I think he had kids or something, and I don't remember how this was brought up, but he mentioned something about children. He might have asked something along the lines of if we had kids, but my soul was leaving my body out of complete embarrassment and discomfort at this point. My uncle's response to this stranger's asinine assumption was to say, "No, but maybe one day." I snapped at that point. Of course, I didn't just start randomly yelling, but maybe I damn well should have. Instead, after the stranger left, I told him to knock it off. I was so uncomfortable, but I tried to get my point across. After all, who just says things like that to random strangers? People just kept assuming that we were married, because he never even bothered to tell them the truth. He then turns to me with no concept of reality of the situation whatsoever, and tells me, "What? You'd be a great mother." The convention was completely ruined for me after that, and I didn't want to be seen with him in there anymore. We ended up walking the boardwalk afterwards, but he was still too close and personal, like we were dating despite my verbal discomfort towards it. I just wanted to go home. I even told my parents what happened when we finally got back, but nothing came of it, considering that he was still living with us for months after the convention. After that, though, I never went anywhere alone with him again. I know maybe he wouldn't have actually done anything to harm me, but it was the implication that when we were out alone together, he was telling people that we were married, let alone considering having children. It wasn't even like I could drive away because I didn't have a license. No one at home really took me seriously. He eventually got kicked out over an unrelated incident. His daughter doesn't talk to him anymore either. There are plenty of other creepy stories with him, but for the sake of this and others' anonymity, and keeping this from getting any longer than it already is, I'll just leave it here. What triggered all these memories again was when he tried reaching out to me on Facebook a few months ago. "How's the family doing?" Like nothing ever happened. I still can't even watch movies that I enjoyed without thinking about him near me. So, dear uncle that lied to strangers about me being your wife, let's never meet again. This is something that was super traumatic for me, but it was never discussed again in my household. I was talking with my mom about it the other night, and she still didn't say much. I thought I would share my thoughts with you all. When I was 13, I got a Dell desktop for school. The internet was fairly new for me back in 2003. AOL, MySpace, Yahoo Messenger, AOL chat rooms, 16 female California, anyone? AOL chat rooms was where I went. I was a shy, overweight kid back then. Still shy to this day, but online. Online I could be anyone. I could say anything I wanted. It was amazing. I discovered so many things when I got on the internet. If I could be anyone, so could someone else. Thus is how I met one 27-year-old man. One night I logged on. The AOL dial-up sound still makes me feel uneasy. I was sitting in the cold, dark kitchen. The computer was here so I could be monitored. It was just me and my mom, though, and she was always working, so no one really monitored me. Plus, she had no idea how to use a computer, so I could get away with a lot. I was bored, so I hopped into an AOL chat room. I lurked for a bit, then 15 and female here. I was really 13, but saying I was older made me feel so much more mature. Suddenly, I got a private message. "Hey, my name is Rob. Where are you from?" And that's how it got started. I told him where I was from, that I was in high school, which wasn't a lie. My school was from 7th to 12th grade. "How about you?" "Oh, 19, male. I'm from New York." Oh man, it was cool just to be talking to an older guy, and boy was he cute. Honestly, I don't really remember much. Maybe I blanked out. Maybe my memory is just shot. I do remember we sent a lot of emails back and forth, the occasional phone call. I remember finding out he was talking to another girl as well, and I wanted to break things off, but he begged and pleaded until I caved. Then the "let's meet." I was nervous. He had never asked for a picture. He had never really asked for much from me at all. Just the emails back and forth, a phone call a day. But somehow he made me feel safe. He made me feel wanted and cared for. He drove from New York to West Virginia one day. My mom worked right beside my house, so he parked about a quarter-mile away and took the back alley to enter. My friend was with me when he showed up, but was scared when she saw him and ran out the back door. I maybe should have taken a hint from that, but I just stood on the back porch with my head down. I was given a hug as he led me inside. Not 5 minutes after being there, sitting on the couch, did he move things further, then even further into my bedroom. I won't get into the details on what happened next. I assume most can guess. After that, he left, with instructions to get in his car after I got off the school bus, and we would go on a date. I had no idea where he was staying. I lived extremely far in the country, about an hour's drive from the closest hotel. The next day I got ready for school, rode the bus for the 45-minute drive, and as soon as I hop off in the local parking lot, I get directly into his car. Nobody noticed. Nobody said anything. We drive around, but we never go on a date. He finds a different place to park so that he can use me. I notice a photo of another young girl, 15 or 16, in the visor of his car. I question him, but I believe when he tells me it's his cousin. I believe when I question why his hairline is receding so much. Believe him when he tells me I can't see his driver's license because he left it behind in the hotel. I believed all these things when he said he loved me. I get dropped back off at school, super sad that he was going back home, with promises that he would call later. Again, everything feels fuzzy. I can't remember many emotions from this time. I do remember that a few days later, my mom says she found out I skipped school with a man, that I was never to see him again, and that was that. I do remember sending an email. I do remember some sort of late-night call, saying, "I wish I could just live with you." I remember him suggesting to come get me, and I remember saying okay. Days later, by the time he made the drive again, I was feeling iffy about leaving my mom. I loved her after all, and I didn't really think things through. I didn't put much thought into anything really. I packed a few clothes in a suitcase, forgot underwear. That's one of my sharpest memories. I felt bad that he had driven 8 hours to get me, so I left in the middle of the night. I got in the car with him and his cousin. He got in the back seat with me, and proceeded to have sex with me while his cousin drove, then get back in the front seat. This happened a few times between my home and his. The drive took forever. I had nothing to drink and was offered nothing when they got something. They stopped to nap at a rest stop, and I attempted to call my mom, who was disabled on our phone. I dug around for some change to get something to drink, but couldn't afford anything in the convenience store, so I drank out of the truck stop sink. Hours later, we park a block away from his house, while he runs to get something. I'm sitting in the back seat, waking up from a nap, when around 8 or so men and women in black suits surround the car, screaming for us to get out with our hands up. My first thought, shit, first 10 minutes in New York and I'm already being robbed. I was terrified. I get out and a man pulls me over to the curb, while the other officers force his cousin onto the ground. All the while they're asking my name and age, telling me to tell his cousin my age. I'm put in the back of an unmarked car, driven to the New York Police Department, past reporters, cameras, and news trucks, stuck into the back of the station, where I see Rob in handcuffs for the last time. And for in-love 14-year-old me, this was devastating. I was taken into a room and questioned for hours, then taken to the hospital, then a hotel where a nice woman brought me Taco Bell and stayed with me as I fell asleep. The next day, 2 FBI officers escorted me home on a plane. I got off and I was greeted by police officers, my mother, and a horde of news reporters. I later found out that when my mom reported me missing, the police didn't want to do much. They didn't even take a picture of me. She had his license plate number. She remembered seeing his car parked by the road that first meeting. She took notice since it was an out-of-state car. Thanks to her being vigilant, I find this is probably the only reason I'm alive today. The police had said they would look into it, but that wasn't enough for my mom. She contacted a family friend, who in turn contacted the governor of West Virginia, who in turn made the police look further into it. After they ran the license number, looked into the man, they found out who he was. That was when they issued an Amber Alert, noting that I was in extreme danger. My cousin told my mom that he looked at Rob's rap sheet, and it was about a mile long, but he wouldn't tell my mother what was on it, for fear of scaring her even more. I never went to court or any of the hearings, but I did fall into a horrible depression. My friends' parents wouldn't let me hang out with them. People spray-painted slut on my locker at school. I had no friends, but most of all, I thought a man was in prison for loving me. When I learned he got sentenced to 10 years in prison, which he served every year of, I became deeply troubled. I was in and out of the mental hospital for self-harm for years, on a slew of different medications. Psychiatrists never talked to me about anything. I had to process it all myself. My teenage years were a bit better, though. I transferred schools and made best friends. I graduated. But in the back of my mind, I still felt I was the reason a man had lost 10 years of his life. Until I was told he was let out of prison. A couple of years later, he was out. I contacted him on Facebook. At the time, I was around 24 or 25. He told me that if I ever contacted him again, he would kill me and my mother. That he still knows where I live. I had no idea what he planned to do with me. My mom still says selling me to a sex trafficker. I was told he had other girls my age that he was talking to as well. Some good things happened because of my kidnapping, though. Schools all over my state started internet safety education classes, and kids were taught safety. Parents were taught how to keep their kids safe, and no other girls were taken by the man. So to the man who ruined so many years of my life, I'm 29 now, happy, healthy, and I have zero remorse that you're now listed as a level 3 offender, and that you were in prison for so many years.